So finally, let us summarize what we have found across all of the ace-high flops. I thought this was a pretty interesting topic because a lot of people just tend to bet one big blind and that's all that they think about, and then they're done with it, right? And they just move on. And I think I showed why just using one big blind on all these different ace-high flops isn't a very good strategy. And we can earn much more by using sizings that make sense, basically. Both from a GTO perspective, but also just exploiting how we believe the population is going to play on many different flops. So I definitely thought I did a pretty good job finding these things, and it was quite interesting. And yeah, also I hope you did like it too, Trezoskus. So anyways, the questions I asked in order to find my preferred strategy was firstly, how simple would the pure GTO strategy be? And if it's like, is it so simple that it's easy for villain to deviate? To play correctly against it? Or is it like too complicated for us to play ourselves so that it's not very practical to try and integrate? Or, um, or like, is it a strategy that is really good? Is the pure GTO strategy really good, and we can just integrate it ourselves because people will play against it wrong anyways? So, and then I went ahead and I found some different sizings. So I tried like half pot only. I tried one big blind only. I tried 3/4 only. I tried two different sizings. I tried to get rid of a checking range sometimes. And so I tried to find all of the different types of strategies which could be viable. And then I basically picked the best one based on how I thought villain would deviate the most from it and how we could play it ourselves and how practical it was. And that's how I chose these strategies, basically. So ace, queen, jack, we saw that half pot only on rainbow and suited boards was the go-to. It's very simple. You just half pot your entire range. On the monotone board, we lost value because he can have as many flushes now, and so we need to use a one big blind only strategy. On ace king 5, so ace king 5, ace queen 5, and ace 10 5, these all follow a similar board structure actually, because these are all an ace high board with another Broadway card and then one low card. So on these boards where there was like another Broadway card and a low disconnected card to the board, we ended up with a two sizing strategy basically. And this strategy is close to the GTO strategy, but people will misplay against it quite often. They won't be folding their bottom pairs enough. Against this, now that our small sizing is much weaker, they won't be raising enough bluffs like 5-2 suited, etc. They should be raising that against a small sizing, but they won't be doing that anymore. But they don't do that as a standard, so I think utilizing a two sizing strategy on these boards is very good. And they all fall into the same category, even though the high cards are slightly different. The only difference is, as we saw on ace king 5, we do need to have a bit of a checking range. Now we go to the monotone versions of these types of flops, and these are the only monotone types of flops where I would encourage a sizing other than one big blind. So on these boards, I would encourage us to be betting half pot, because they should be folding all bottom pairs, even if we half pot our entire range without a checking range. And GTO would be using half pot on these boards, but it would have a pretty wide checking range. But I thought we could just bet our entire range half pot to make it simple, because they should be check raising like a bunch of random high cards with a backdoor flush draw or something, and people just won't be doing that as a default. So I really like the idea of just going half pot only with our entire range as an exploit, basically, on monotone boards only. So these monotone boards are quite interesting, basically. We move on to ace jack 9 and ace 10 7. So these two types of boards are they're kind of in between, like these two Broadway cards with an ace and ace queen jack. So it's kind of in the middle, and a lot of different strategies worked. Like we found on these boards that they would include all different types of sizings. They'd use one big blind, they'd use half pot sometimes, they would check sometimes, they would bet three quarters, they would pot sometimes. So GTO for these boards is one of the most complicated, basically, and very impractical. And so we need to figure out what we thought could be a good strategy. And so my two choices I had were either small and large, that made some sense, or half pot only. And I think those two strategies are both perfectly fine and viable. I decided to go with half pot only, mainly because the small and large, whilst we did cover it and how to choose what sizing to go with, it's they're not going to make as many mistakes as on these boards. So if we go small, they still can't check raise too much. If we go large, it's not like they have to overfold too many of their bottom pairs on these boards, actually. So it looks. So I thought that half pot only would be the best idea. And we're going to ensure, like, they should be calling the same range against half pot only as they should to a small and large against a large bet. So I thought as an exploit, picking half pot only entire range did make sense on these boards as well, basically. And then on the connected, like monotone connected versions, we just go one big blind only because basically we got less value again. So on these like connected boards with high cards, we have so much value that we can basically go half pot only with our entire range. Whereas on these boards, we want to like some hands want to go large for value clearly, but some others don't as much, basically. So that's one of the difference between these type of boards and those type of boards. So ace-9-4 and ace-7-2 are the next similar kind of boards. These two boards are basically dry boards with no connectivity at all. They have a low card disconnected to the ace, and then I mean, the middle card is disconnected to the ace, which is disconnected to the low card. So these are the driest type of boards available, and we've got a massive range advantage, and so we can get extra value with an ace, but it doesn't make any sense because we've got so much fold equity on the flop already. So there's just no point in really using a larger sizing, basically. And so we just go small only. I mean, on the suited version here on ace-9-4, it would go large. I think it's because, you know, we do have some nines in our range here. But on the rainbow version, it wouldn't. Like, we've got a lot of 10-9, queen-9, raising on the button, etc. But I do think that it makes sense to go small only still. Like, it's not like it's tough to remember, you know, ace-9-4 rainbow, small only, but ace-9-4 suited, go with a half pot sizing sometimes. It was just confusing. So I wanted to simplify and pick one sizing only, and on these specific type of boards, it does make sense to go small, one big blind only on the flop. Including monotone boards. So all other monotone boards from now, we go small only because they should have a massive raising range, which they won't. Ace-8-4 and ace-7-6. So these two type of boards are the type of boards which are ace high and then two low cards which are connected. So the 8 and 4 can have a bunch of straight draws, as can the 7 and 6. So on these type of boards, GTO is using a small and large strategy. And the types of hands it's want to do that with, I did cover in the videos. And so I like to use small and large strategy as well. It's yeah, it's pretty intuitive how to use it once you study it. And on ace-8-4 and ace-7-6 monotone, I would recommend to go small only because they need to raise so much against a one big blind only sizing, because we would actually use some half pot sizing, if I remember. Like GTO would use some half pot sizing, and if we just go small only, they need to raise so much. It's actually incredible. And so I don't think people will be raising nearly enough with like bottom pair or like some Again, random one card flush draws, stuff like that. And it did make sense to go small only again. Finally, on ace 4-3, these are the wheel type of boards. Pretty basic. Like, this is probably the board that hits out of position the strongest out of all ace high boards. We don't have any wheels, whilst they have all of them. Villain, even like GTO does call pocket threes at a tiny frequency, like 5 or 10% of the time, for example. Pocket twos as well. So against the button at deep stacks. So like, these are the type of boards where villain really has a range advantage because he's not going to be three betting much with ace four or ace three, but he's calling them all the time. He's calling all his 4-3 combos here. Even offsuited is going to be called at some frequency. And so, and then he's got all 5-2 suited, for example. We don't have any of those. And so we like in position here isn't having a massive range advantage, but I mean he has a massive range advantage because it's an ace high board, but not enough to make us want to split our sizings basically, and we still make him fold so much random 2-over cards without any equity basically. So it's really good here to go small only with everything. So monotone rainbow suited boards, small only. So these were the strategies I figured out, and I think we covered pretty much all the different types of board structures for ace-high boards, button versus big blind, and I think it was quite, it was pretty good. And yeah, I'm glad that I did this because I wanted to like solidify my strategy. Like I already had a good idea of this, but now I've got like a really good idea, and it's going to be like automatic to implement this basically. So it's really good. It's going to help me, like, when I see this spot, I just see it and I click the button. Helps with multi-tabling, stuff like that. So it's really good that I spent some time going over this, and I will plan on doing something like this once a month. So, every single month, I'm going to try and cover one stack depth, one position, like heads up or button versus big blind or small blind versus big blind, and then pick a nice stack depth, which I think is common, and pick some common types of board structures and see if there's any subtle differences in how we should play them. And I want to create my own like database, basically, like my own database, not a GTO database, because then I could just use Insta GTO or like the new GTO base by Simple Poker GTO, those guys. But like I want to have my own exploitative database exploiting the population, and I think these sizings and these strategies is going to have population playing the most incorrectly against my strategy, even if I just use this as a default. So this is why I like to do this type of work basically. And yeah, I am going to try to do this about once a month, and this is only my GTO database this is only my own exploitative database creation though. Like I'll still do some other sims just when I got time, just interesting spots or whatever, but I think this is also extremely important. So yeah, got some stuff to look forward to. Let's quickly summarize. Small and large is the standard sizing on rainbow and two-tone flops. On suited flops, generally we will have more combos to go larger with, just because we're going to have more backdoor draws with one card, for example. And it's more natural that we want to go larger with some hands to be getting more value. And they will also be having more flush draws to call with. Anyways, the exceptions will be straight possible flops with an ace. So on a Broadway board, we will be going half pot only. Also on connected ace XX flops, we go half pot only. And then on wheel boards, we go one big blind only, because that's the worst type of ace-high board for us. And then on completely disconnected flops, we also go small only because we have so much fold equity. So I made our strategies so that they're simple to remember, I think. It's not too complicated and very implementable. Monotone flops, we go small only as our standard sizing. The exceptions will be when there's one other Broadway card on the board, so that there are some high gut shots. Then in that case, we go half pot with our entire range as an exploit. I did go over those this point in the video, basically, in the videos. So yeah, I think that is pretty interesting. And also, Trzaskis, if you've got any like because I tried to go over this like kind of quickly, right? There's probably a lot of little details that I missed, and after watching all of this, if you ever want to like go over something more specific, like see a few specific turns or some specific rivers or some specific action, I don't know. On these flops, I've got all the sims for them, so just let me know if you want to go over something in more detail, and we can definitely do that together. But yeah, I hope you like this, and yeah, so that's going to be it, and yeah, I hope you enjoy.